Hey, I'm Christy. Been watching Roswell since the beginning. Liz is my favorite. Also love Max and Liz.
Hi, I'm Allison. I've been watching Roswell since the beginning. My favorite character is Michael, and my favorite couple is Michael and Maria.
Hi, my name is Tisha. I also have been watching Roswell from the beginning. My favorite couple is Max and Liz, but I really like Maria as well.
Hello, my name is Jessica. I've been watching Roswell since the very beginning. My favorite Roswell couples are Maria and Michael, but I really love all the characters just as much as the same.
Awesome. And we're all going to be reading the end of Dreamwalk today. Chapter 16. Michael pulled Kyle's car into an empty space right in front of Garrison's hardware store and passed his hand over the dashboard to stop the engine. Double checking to confirm that the sack he had previously picked up was tucked safely under the seat, he got out of the car. Afraid to risk the important hidden items from being stolen, he fused the car locks with his hand. Now, if anyone tried to break into the flashy car, they would have to do it by smashing the window or cutting through the cloth roof. And let's assume that people strolling on the streets of Roswell would be good Samaritans and stop the thief before he got in. Leaving the car behind, Michael went into Garrison's. "Where do you keep your rope?" he asked, grabbing the first employee he saw as he stepped into the store. Naturally, he was the only store employee, since the place was both owned and run by the somewhat elderly old man Garrison. The nickname wasn't an insult, as the man wore it like a badge of honor, preferring to go by the title elderly old man without believing the phrase to be even remotely redundant. He was one of the oldest living residents of Roswell, and as such acted even older than his true age out of the desire to be treated like the oldest living resident in Roswell. It was rather unfortunate for Michael that elderly old man Garrison was in one of his most eccentric moods when he woke up that morning. It was apparently planning to stay that way for the rest of the day. "What kind of rope?" Garrison asked. "Rope," Michael said, wondering why he had even bothered to ask. The place was one of the smaller stores on Roswell's main drag. It wasn't like it would have taken him hours to find the item he was looking for on his own. "Well, what do you want to do with the rope?" elderly old man Garrison asked. "Different kinds of jobs take different kinds of ropes." "Right now I'm thinking of a hanging," Michael suggested. Elderly old man Garrison's laughter turned into a wheezing attack. Granted, he wasn't actually having a real breathing problem. It was all just part of the act. "I hate these quaint, colorful, small-town characters," Michael thought. "Why couldn't ours have been the set of pods that was transported to New York? At least the crazies are actually crazy." Garrison recovered from his false asthma attack and set into his routine. "Now for small jobs, you can use some twine or maybe even some fishing line. Fishing line is good because it's strong but lightweight. Now we don't actually carry fishing line, but we do have twine. Listen, old man." That's elderly old man, Sonny. He was having the most fun he had in a long time. His favorite playmates were the kids, who never seemed to have any interest in playing along. Michael lamented the fact that he had not brought Maria along, because she was so much better to handle these types of characters. In many ways, she is one of those types of characters, he thought. "Sir," Michael stressed the word, which apparently impressed the elderly old man, "I'm in a bit of a hurry, so please either tell me where the rope is, or I will have to take my business elsewhere." Never one to let his fun get in the way of turning a profit, Garrison pointed Michael in the right direction. "Aisle 3, Sonny, and you let me know if you need any help." "Sure," Michael said, having absolutely no intention to ask, even if he had to climb the shelves himself to reach what he was looking for. Hurrying down aisle 3, Michael found a huge collection of rope of all different varieties. Good thing I cut the old man off, he thought, or we'd be here all afternoon. Grabbing a bag of 50-foot-long, 1-inch wide rope off the shelf, Michael hurried back to make his purchase. He had taken too much time in getting the first items on his list, and he could already hear Maria complaining about his disappearance. He didn't need to take any longer. For once, the delay wasn't Michael's fault. If Kyle could learn to fill his car with gas once in a while, he cursed his friend one more time, Michael had considered just driving along without any gas in the car. It was possible to do that with his powers, but it didn't really do nice things to the engine. Instead, Michael had to use his powers to push the car to a gas station for a fill-up. Luckily, he only had one more stop on the list before he could head back to Isabel's side. Of course, he still had to have another run-in with elderly old man Garrison at the checkout. "Found that rope?" Elderly asked the obvious, as Michael dropped his purchase on the counter in front of him. Yes. Michael decided to keep his answer short and sweet. Apparently, where money was concerned, elderly old man Garrison was just as happy to keep the transaction quick and efficient, and Michael easily paid for the items and rushed out of the store. Come back soon, the store owner hobbled with a wave. Ignoring the man, Michael continued walking down the Roswell main shopping district to a store called the Pottery Place. The store window was full of more knickknacks and dust collectors than he ever imagined anyone could possibly need. Quite frankly, he had never expected to see the inside of the store in his lifetime in Roswell, but he had certainly done stranger things in the unending quest to combat strange alien phenomena. Bracing himself with the smell of potpourri and the sounds of wind chimes, Michael entered a curiosity shop. The things I do for my friends was the last thing he thought before the kitsch overwhelmed him. If Michael had taken just a few more seconds to prepare himself before entering the store, he would have run into Jim Valenti coming out of Moby Disc, the music store attached to the Pottery Place. Valenti was carrying a bag full of sheet music and a hastily purchased guitar, still humming the same happy tune that had been stuck in his head all day. Loading the items into his SUV, Valenti checked to confirm that his earlier purchases were still on the front seat, then pulled out onto the street. He drove his car from town, passing the Evansons' home, entirely unaware of the drama going on inside involving his son and his friends. Continuing several blocks over, he pulled up in front of the house with the garage wide open. As he got out of his SUV, Valenti heard familiar music coming from the garage that, not so coincidentally, happened to be the very same tune he had been humming for the better part of the morning. Good, they started without me, he thought, as he pulled his bags and his new guitar out of the vehicle. From the open garage, the band saw him walking up the drive and stopped playing their song. The three remaining members of the group, formerly known as the Wits, looked at one another with a growing sense of anticipation. Sorry I'm late, fellas. Valenti entered the garage, carefully setting down his guitar. I rode out to a music store in Hondo first thing this morning. Had to pick up some sheet music I'd special ordered. There are some really great rockabilly tunes in here. He held up one of his bags. Rockabilly? The drummer Chris sounded skeptical. We're really more of an alternative band, Marcus, the rhythm guy added. Kind of a younger sound. He had stressed the word younger when he said it. I know, Valenti said, but you have to try these songs. I promise you, it will be a great new sound for us. Chris and Marcus looked to their new leader, Mickey, silently willing him to have the conversation they had previously talked about that morning. Being trained in detective work, Valenti caught the glares and started putting things together. It wasn't a difficult case to crack. Something wrong, Mickey? He asked. Can you guys give us a second? The lead guitarist asked his other band members. Without another word, Chris and Marcus fled the garage. Let me guess. Valenti saved the team from the difficult job he had been left to do. It's not working out. Look, Sheriff. Jim, he corrected the boy. I haven't been a sheriff for over 5 months now. Mickey was uncomfortable calling him by his first name. Mr. Valenti, the guys and I have been having a great time the past few days. I mean, all the jamming we've been doing has been really fun. But starting a band with someone my age doesn't fit into your plans. Valenti finished the thought for him, hoping to save the boy from the embarrassment of having to say it to him. That's not it. Mickey sat on the ratty old couch that his parents had thrown into the garage for him and his friends. An unnoticed plum of dust rose from the cushion. The whole band thing isn't really in our plans. You see, Alex was really the driving force behind the Wits. I know, Valenti thought about Alex. It was the one part of his life where he really came out of his shell. And without him, there is no band, Mickey added. When you came up to us at the memorial, we were all excited to have the chance to go on with the group, but it's not the same, he guessed. Not really, the teen admitted. It has nothing to do with you. It's just that none of us is all that interested anymore. With senior year approaching and colleges to look at. No, I understand, and I've got to tell you, Mickey, it takes a good man to know what he wants in life and not be afraid to say it. Thanks, sir, Mickey replied, getting off the old couch. Please knock off the sir stuff. Okay, Jim. He held out his hand for Valenti to shake. Kyle's really lucky to have an understanding father like you. Thanks, Valenti beamed the compliment. But about Kyle, can you and the guys keep this whole band thing just between us? I think it would embarrass him to know that his dad's been hanging out with his classmates. It'll be our secret. See you around, Valenti said, grabbing his guitar and making his way out of the garage. As he walked down the drive, he nodded his goodbye to the other band members who were hanging out on the porch. They waved and smiled in response. Roswell's got some good kids in it, he thought. Back in his SUV, Valenti paused after placing the key in the ignition. Singing with the band had been the first recreational thing he had done in months, and he was going to miss it. It was nice to take a break from the responsibilities inherent in his more alien endeavors. He did understand where the kids were coming from. but that didn't necessarily mean that he couldn't continue with his plans. Starting up the engine, Valenti's mind started working out an idea. He looked over to the passenger seat and saw the bags full of sheet music he had spent the morning collecting. It would be a shame to let all that music go to waste, he thought as he pulled away from the curb. And maybe it is time I started doing things with people my own age. I do tend to spend most of my time with friends who are young enough to be my children. Valenti turned the idea over in his head for the rest of his drive home. Music had always been an important part of his life in the past. In fact, there had been a time while he was in high school when it was even more important to him than going into law enforcement. Now that he was no longer sheriff, he considered that it could be time again to give music another try. All he would need to do is gather up a band and maybe come up with a really good name for the group. Feeling more motivated than he had since losing his job, Valenti started putting together his plans. He thought of some guys he could get in contact with who he knew liked to play. He also thought of a few local bars that were always looking to showcase new talent. All they would really need was a place to rehearse, preferably outside of his own home, so that he wouldn't have to tell Kyle until he was sure it was going to work out. The rest of the ride, he continued to build on his ideas for the band that would eventually become known as the Kit Sugars. Chapter 17. Liz shuffled through the magazines in the doctor's outer office, lamenting the fact that everything had a published date of at least a year ago. She was looking for something to take her mind off her concerns for Jason as he was being examined in the other room. He has to be okay. It's just a little bruise. But she couldn't help think of the bigger wounds that they couldn't see. She should have realized that the changes in Jason had been caused by something serious, since he had totally shut her out. It was one thing for him to break away from his parents, since that was traditionally part of the process of growing up. But for him to shut himself off from a close, trusted friend was a real sign of trouble. Liz blamed herself. Her whole world had turned so crazy since Max had saved her that day in the crashdown that it was understandable that she might have missed the warning signs. She could have been around more, considering Artesia had gotten a lot closer once she had obtained her driver's license. But she knew that the real person to blame was George Lyles, and she would certainly have to deal with that. Frustrated, she dropped the copies of out-of-date Time and Newsweek magazines back into the rack and settled on an old copy of Highlights magazine for children. Turning to the puzzle section, she intended to test her mind with harmless, easy-to-solve riddles as opposed to the difficult games she seemed to be stuck with every day lately. This isn't the first bruise like this I've seen on you, Dr. Sellers said as he examined Jason's shoulder. As usual, Jason said nothing, sitting on the examination table, staring down at his feet. Max noticed that he had shut down once again as soon as they had reached Dr. Sellers' doorstep. I guess he's an active kid, Max offered, not quite sure how much to say right then. They had been lucky enough to find Jason's family doctor at home that Saturday. The affable older man was kind enough to open the office attached to his home to give Jason the once-over. Liz and Max explained that he had fallen off his ATV after having gone on a little unsupervised joyride, assuming that it would be best not to raise questions about why the two teens had let him go out on his bike without his parents around. I'm sorry, how was it that you know Jason? The doctor asked, genuinely concerned for the child's safety. Max gave the man extra points for being so obviously protective. He's my friend. Jason offered the first kind words to Max since they had met yesterday, speaking through his locked bedroom door. He and Liz grew up together, Max added, since Liz had decided to stay out in the waiting room to give Jason some privacy. In Roswell. Okay, the doctor said, both to the explanation and to indicate he was done with the examination. You can put your shirt back on. Everything looks fine to me, but I'll want you to come back with your mom on Monday so we can get some x-rays just to be sure. Jason nodded his head. We'll make sure he comes back, Max added. Good, Dr. Sellers replied. Jason, do you mind if I speak to Max for a moment? Jason looked to Max to see if it was okay. Why don't you go out and wait with Liz, Max said as the boy hopped down off the table. I'm sure I'll only be a minute. Okay, Jason said softly as he left the room. Once the boy was out of earshot, the doctor turned to Max. I don't know exactly how close you two are, but Jason seems to trust you. I hope, Max said. The doctor continued. Jason hasn't really trusted anyone for a while now. Max was confused at just how closely the doctor knew his patient, and apparently his face showed his bewilderment. It's a small town, Sellers explained. People come to me with their medical problems, and they open up about other things, too. His mom's a good woman. She seems to be, Max agreed. I know she and Liz are very close. Like I said, I've noticed these bruises before, the doctor continued. I never really put it together. We're taking care of it, Max assured him. Jason's opening up to us. We're going to be talking to his mom. I'm glad to hear that, the doctor said. He's a good kid. You did the right thing bringing him here. Max was pleased by the doctor's words. It was the first sign that he was doing the right thing in his role as guardian for the weekend. Thanks. Take my card. The doctor handed a slip of paper. A small slip of paper. Please call me no matter what happens. Okay. Max shook the doctor's hand. He went out into the lobby and collected Liz and Jason, bolstered by the doctor's simple words. For the first time that weekend, he felt like he was in control. They had resolved Jason's attitude problems and were going to tackle the larger issue when his parents returned. Not only that, but they also had an adult on their side who happened to be a medical expert. This bolstered Max's confidence to believe that everything would turn out right. Jason said everything was fine, Liz confirmed as they walked back out to the bikes. They had been so concerned about getting Jason checked out immediately that neither of them had even thought to stop back at the house and pick up Max's car. Looks that way, Max replied. Dr. Sellers wants him to come in Monday for some x-rays. They could both see the look of trepidation on Jason's face as he climbed aboard the ATV behind Max. I'll go too, Liz offered. I can stay until Monday. Are you sure? Jason asked. I'll stay as long as you need me, she replied. They rode the bikes back to Jason's home, carefully sticking to the road so as not to risk any more adventures. Max wasn't sure if ATVs were okay to ride on the street, but he honestly didn't care. It was only a short trip from the doctor's place, and they found themselves pulling back into the garage only a few minutes later. Placing the two remaining sets of keys on the rack, they made their way to the house. Entering the Lyles' foyer, the trio split into two different directions. Jason went upstairs to change since his clothes were torn and dirty from the fall. Max's clothes were a bit dusty as well, but hunger was his primary distraction since he was the only one of them who had left the house without breakfast. He hadn't had a shower either, but that could wait until his stomach stopped rumbling. Making his way to the kitchen, he left Liz to check the answering machine to see if Jason's parents had called while they were out. Searching through the kitchen cabinets, hoping for something to ease his hunger, Max was hopeful when he found a bottle of Tabasco sauce. Now he just needed something to pour it over. In the adjoining cabinet, he found what he was looking for in one of those incredibly sugary breakfast bars. True, it wasn't a lot of food, but it would hold him over until they could put together something for lunch. Pouring the Tabasco over the breakfast bar for just the right sweet and spicy snack, he had taken only one bite when Liz called to him from the living room. The tone of her voice implied that he should hurry. What's wrong? He asked as soon as he entered the room with his breakfast bar still in hand. Listen to this, she replied, pressing the play button on the machine. The machine announced that there were 4 messages, and after a short pause, Maria's voice came through. Liz, Max, where are you? You guys need to get back here fast. Something's wrong with Isabel. She's sick. We think it's some kind of Czechoslovakian flu. Hurry. Max blanched. A drop of Tabasco sauce fell onto the spotless beige carpet. He knew that Czechoslovakian was Liz and Maria's code word for anything alien-related. Something was seriously wrong with his sister. It sounded like Maria didn't have a clue what it was. The other messages are from Maria, too. Liz stopped the tape so Max would not hear the increasing desperation in Maria's voice with each call. She said she's at your place. Give her a call and I'll go get Jason. We can't take him to Roswell, Max said as he took the phone from Liz. Well, we can't leave him here, Liz said. And I'm not staying behind if something is really wrong with your sister. Could be dangerous, he said, dialing his own phone number. If things turn out to be too intense, we'll drop him off at my folks, Liz said as she left the room, ending the argument right there. Evan's residence, Maria answered on the other end of the line. It's me, Max said. What's wrong? Maria filled him in on the situation, which didn't take long since she couldn't tell him much. Following a litany of questions that she couldn't answer, Max finally gave up on asking for information that she obviously did not possess. He turned to see Liz and Jason standing in the doorway, ready to travel. We'll be there in 20 minutes, he said into the phone. But you're over 40 miles away, Maria answered back. We'll be there, he insisted, hanging up the phone. Jason, how do you feel about visiting your old hometown? Kyle's eyes popped open. He had been prematurely forced out of his meditation when he heard Isabel calling his name. Running to the bedroom, he found Maria cradling the phone in her hands with an expression of relief across her face. Max and Liz are on their way, she reported, looking at her watch to see that it was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She had no idea if their friends could do anything more than she and Kyle were already doing, but the mere fact that they were on their way back was comforting. For Max to be there in 20 minutes meant he would have to break more than a few traffic laws. Hopefully, former Sheriff Valenti could take care of it if anything happened. I think Isabel tried to contact me, Kyle said. What? How? When I was meditating, he explained. I was in the process of purging my mind when I saw her for a brief moment. She was calling my name. Did you tell her how we can help her? Maria asked, the obvious. No, Kyle said as he took a seat beside his Cosmatos friend. But she seemed desperate. I don't think we have much time. Don't worry, I've got a plan, Michael said as he climbed in the window and dropped a large sack on the floor. Kyle was up and around the bed beside Maria in a matter of moments, watching as Michael first took a collection of stones from his sack. Maria instantly recognized them, but Kyle had no clue as to what good they would be. I figure if anything's going to help us, it's these, Michael said with his usual intensity. Then, looking at Kyle, he explained further. Before you were brought into our ever-expanding inner circle, a Native American guy named Riverdog gave us these. I took part in one of his rituals, and it nearly killed me. The stones come from our home planet. They saved me. Maria was visibly upset at the reminder of the time when she had almost lost Michael. She tried not to dwell on it because it was in the past, and in the present it was a more pressing threat. Max is on his way. We need to prepare. Michael returned to his magic sack and pulled out the long rope, handed it to Maria. I need you to cut 5 pieces of rope that are about 4 feet long. Okay, she said with a question in her voice. What do you want me to do with the rest? Bring it back with the smaller pieces. Gotcha. She was out of the room in a flash to search for something she could use to cut the thick rope. Kyle, help me out, Michael said, moving to the bed, motioning for Kyle to get on the other side. Grabbing one side of the headboard, he instructed Kyle to do the same. Together, they slid Isabel in her bed about 2 feet away from the wall, so it was closer to the center of the room. Maria, Michael called out into the hall. Almost done, she yelled back. Tension filled the air as Michael impatiently waited for his girlfriend to return. Kyle knew better than to say anything when Michael was in this kind of mood. He would only throw rude comments back. What exactly are we doing? Maria asked, coming back into the room. She apparently was used to the rude comments. Making a medicine wheel, Michael stated simply as he took the longer piece of rope from her. Walking around the bed, he laid the rope on the floor in a circle. It was a little long, so the ends overlapped for a good 3 feet. That task complete, Michael held his hand out to Maria, and she handed him the smaller pieces she had cut with a kitchen knife. I didn't have the time to collect a few hundred rocks to make the same design Riverdog made when I was sick. We'll have to go with this. He started laying out the rope 1 piece at a time, leaving one end beside Isabel, the other end on the rope circle. The plan was to use the rope to recreate the medicine wheel design that Riverdog had laid out on the ground when Michael's friends had to pull him back from his own near-death experience. When placing the smaller ropes beside Isabel on the bed, he had to cheat a little since a couple of the pieces weren't long enough to reach from her to the circle on the floor. However, he really didn't think it mattered, because the design probably had nothing to do with the healing. The Royal Ford used the healing stones twice since then to revive Niceto, although only one of the attempts had been successful. They hadn't recreated the medicine wheel design on those occasions, but with Isabel's life at stake, Michael wasn't taking any chances. He looked down at the 5 lines radiating out from Isabel to equidistant points around the circle. It wasn't exactly pretty, nor was it entirely complete, with several gaps throughout, but it would have to do. Michael went back to his goodie bag and pulled out the last item. It was a bowl he had bought in the pottery place that was painted with some kind of Native American-inspired artwork. He actually suspected that it was just a cheap tourist knockoff. It still had a price tag glued to the side, which he quickly rubbed off. Fill this with water. He handed it to Kyle, and we'll be ready as soon as Max and Liz arrive. The darkness receded, and the desert flew back into place. Isabel took a moment to reorientate herself after nearly losing touch with the fictional reality in which she was trapped. Kyle and the mysterious orb had disappeared as curiously as they had appeared. For a brief moment, she had seen him with his eyes open and had noticed the shock on his face as if he wasn't expecting to see her. She wondered if it was just a dream image, or Kyle, or if maybe her friends were trying to rescue her. She had hoped the latter was the case, but couldn't stop thinking about the fact that her entire family was gone for the weekend. It was very possible that no one would be aware of what she was going through until late Sunday night. She worried that could be too late. Making her way back to the spot where she had been digging, she thought that little Kyle had disappeared as well. But as she got closer, she realized that the hole was now deep enough that little Kyle could bend down in it and be totally hidden from view. Isabel sensed that they were never going to find out what they were looking for until Kyle's subconscious allowed them to, and she didn't see that happening any time in the near future. You stopped digging, the boy said when she returned to him. You intend to keep us digging forever, she simply replied. He looked guiltily at having been caught. Look, Kyle, I came here to help, but you're not letting me, Isabel said gently. If you insist on keeping me here, you're going to have to give me some more to work with. The pair of buzzards, or vultures, was circling again. Strangely, Isabel took this as a good sign. A road appeared, knifing through the desert with a car parked alongside it. The car looked to be from the 80s, But Isabel really knew nothing about cars. Laughter filled the air. Great, more imagery, and me without my dream analysis book. Well, at least it's something. The birds seemed to be talking to each other, letting out caws that at first sounded cheerful, but evolved into angry bellows. The sounds grew louder as Isabel had to struggle to hear her own thoughts. The laughter either stopped or was drowned out by the screeching birds. Kyle looked very, very afraid. It's okay, she said loudly while comforting the child. I'm here. But you'll go away, he said. I might leave your mind, she replied, not wanting to lie to him, but I promise I will never leave you. At that moment, the birds attacked each other as their lazy circles grew into fierce battle. Isabel could only watch, hoping that the fight did not come any closer as their claws got even louder. One of the birds abruptly disappeared, leaving the other alone in flight. The lone bird landed next to Isabel and Kyle, but made no threatening moves towards them. It appeared to be injured, cradling its wing. The sounds of screeches echoed away and were replaced by the sound of crying. It was the same sound she had heard coming from behind the door to the sheriff's office when she had been there earlier. This time, Isabel could tell that it was definitely a man's sobs, and if she wasn't mistaken, she recognized the choked voice of the man between his deep intakes of breath. Again, she looked at the wounded bird. Was it doing the crying? Without having to consult her book on dream imagery, Isabel finally had enough pieces of the puzzle to begin to understand what this was all about. Unfortunately, as she watched the bird, she hadn't noticed that little Kyle had disappeared. Running back to the hole, she saw something peeking up through the dirt. She fell to the ground, pushing the dirt out of the way to find Alex's face staring back at her. He was buried beneath the desert. His dead eyes were locked on her. Isabel recoiled in shock. It took her a minute to recover. The pieces are beginning to tie together, she realized. But what am I supposed to do now?
Chapter 18. Upon hearing the screeching tires of Max's car as it pulled up to the house, Michael ran out of Isabel's room. Running through the house, he had the front door open and he was at the ready to greet his friend and leader. Pushing past his second in command, Max burst into his home and made a beeline for his sister's room, without so much as a hello. Liz followed, trying to ease Jason's concerns without actually telling him why Max was in such an agitated state, which was difficult to do since they had just traveled north on 285 at double the maximum speed allowed by law. Who's the kid? Michael asked in his typical gruff and unwelcoming manner. Who's the dork? The kid shot back. Michael smiled. I like him, he said, and then went to take his preordained place by Max's side without waiting for a formal introduction. Not knowing what they would find in Isabel's room, Liz told Jason to stay in the living room and distracted him with the TV and the Evans' video collection. Remembering that he wasn't the little boy she used to know, Liz avoided suggesting the Disney classics in place of something he'd rather be seeing. Eventually, she just let him pick a film himself since she knew there was nothing in the collection that was too mature for his viewing. She warned him to stay where he was, no matter what he heard, explaining that Isabel could be contagious and she didn't want him getting sick, too. It was a little white lie, but partially true, since honestly she didn't want him exposed to whatever could be happening in the other room. Once he agreed, Liz went to join her friends. In Isabel's room, Max went straight to his sister's side, hardly bothering to notice his friends or the changes in the room's design. Taking Isabel's hand, he did the same check for fever, pulse, and breath rate as everyone else who had entered the room had immediately done. Like the others, he found nothing out of the ordinary, except that his sister still appeared to be in a coma. With his hand still on her forehead, he closed his eyes and tried to make contact with her. He hoped that his healing power alone would be enough to save her, but he got no response. It was almost as if her mind was not in there to answer him back. He reluctantly took his hand away, silently blaming himself for everything, from having gone away for the weekend to being the reason they were stranded on Earth. Self-recrimination was always his first thought when anything happened to his family or friends. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. It was that line from Shakespeare's Henry Part 2 that often came to Max's mind in situations like these. He had never actually read the play, but he was familiar enough with the quote that he had heard one day in English class. Ever since he had found out that he was literally the king of his home planet, he had truly come to understand its meaning. And now I want to bring a child up in this mess, he thought, once again doubting his own abilities, even though his apparent weekend success story was in the living room watching television. What happened to you? Maria broke through his thoughts, referring to the dirty state of his still unchanged clothes. Long story, he replied. Turning to Michael, Max's expression asked what to do next. Everyone take a point along the circle, Michael said, accepting the mantle of command. He passed out a stone to each of his friends as they filed into place, holding one for Liz until she came into the room. Remember, all of our thoughts need to be with Isabel to bring her back. Kyle was the only one in the group unfamiliar with the ritual, since he had not taken part in it when Michael had been ill. That was back when Kyle was still considered one of the bad guys, when in truth he had only been an innocent bystander. What is it exactly that we're doing? He asked, examining the stone that was placed in his hand. Restoring the balance, Michael abruptly replied. Oh, Kyle was still totally unclear. Okay. Cliff's Notes version, Maria built on her boyfriend's non-answer. Michael thinks there's something wrong. With the energy in Isabel's body, the stones carry the same energy. We concentrate. Hold on. Michael thinks there's something wrong with the energy in Isabel's body. The stones carry the same energy. We concentrate on Isabel. We're taken to some higher plane of existence where we get her and bring her back. Higher plane of existence? He worried if where they were going was sanctioned by Buddha. Just concentrate on Isabel and you'll get back fine, she replied. I hope. Kyle tried to ignore her last comment as Liz came into the room, immediately realized what was happening, and took her place on the empty spot along the medicine wheel. Michael handed Liz the last remaining healing stone, picked up the bowl. Riverdog had claimed that water was a substance the aliens and humans had in common and was used to bond them in the ritual. He then handed the bowl to Max on his left. Max also took a drink from the bowl and passed it to Kyle, who went along with the ritual by passing it to Liz. The bowl finally ended with Maria, who placed it on the nightstand beside her, leaving a few sips of water in the bowl, figuring they might need it for Isabel when they revived her. Now came the hardest part. Riverdog had taught them all a chant to accompany the ritual. Although the phrase had been responsible for saving his life, and thus the sound of it was permanently emblazoned into his mind, Michael was not familiar enough with the Native American language to know the exact words or their meaning. Sounding the words out carefully, he began the chant, hoping the pronunciation came close enough to the correct phrase. Takashala Bitawaja. He indicated to the others they should join in, hoping it was their joint concentration behind the words that had mattered more than the words themselves, which he knew he was butchering by even attempting to recite them without a proper translator available. Takashafa Betawaja. They continued the chant with each reciting out to Isabel separately and together as one. With eyes closed, they tried to find their friend, restore the balance, and bring her back. Intensity crept into their voices as they continued to search for their lost member, without any response. But instead of images of Isabel, each of them only saw the darkness behind their sealed eyes. Max realized it had not taken anywhere near this long to locate Michael when he was ill. Peering out, he looked down to his sister and saw no change in her prone body. Takashafa Batawaja, he said, even louder, willing the others to match him in both volume and force. He did not care that Jason was in the other room and could probably hear them. His sister's life could be at stake, and worrying about the possible discovery of their alien secret by a 12-year-old was not high on his priority scale. Takasha Batawaja. Max, he heard Michael's voice, but ignored it. Takasha Batawaja. He repeated the chant again, knowing that he was the only one in the room still speaking. Max, it's not working. Michael gently insisted on, as Max felt the people on either side of him already moving away from the circle. Opening his eyes, Max confirmed that all of his friends already had a look of resignation on their faces. Maybe we did need to use a circle of rocks. I could find Riverdog, Michael suggested, if we know the exact words. No, Max said, it won't work. It was just a guess. Liz quickly went with the positive route. There's probably a lot more we can try. Max barely heard her as he moved into the protective mode. Kyle, was Isabel like this when you found her? Actually, she was sitting up, he explained, in a very uncomfortable looking position. I laid her down. What was the room like? Max continued. Was anything out of place? No, Kyle admitted. I pretty much looked the same way it does now, except for the bed and rope. Oh, and I borrowed your baseball bat. Hope you don't mind. Maria flashed him a confused look. And you didn't move anything else? Max asked, ignoring the last part. Actually, Maria chimed in, I did find her yearbook on the floor. I put it on the desk. Both Max and Michael's faces lit up at the clue, although no one else in the room knew the significance of the yearbook. Why didn't you say anything? Michael asked in an accusing tone. Before Maria had a chance to express her confusion, Max cleared things up for her and the rest of their friends. Isabel uses her yearbook when she dreamwalks on her classmates. He bent over his sister and noticed that her eyelids were fluttering slightly. Max knew that this was a result of the rapid eye movements experienced when people dream. Was it open to a specific page when you found it? No, it was closed, Maria replied, picking up the book and seeing the one beneath it. Look at this, a book on dream analysis. Okay, we know what's going on. Now we just have to figure out who she was dreamwalking, Max said. No, we don't, Kyle interrupted. It's me. Kyle proceeded to explain his previous request that Isabel help fix his dreams and the reason why he had asked. He detailed every bit of his sleeping problem and his conversations with Isabel. Why didn't you say something sooner? Michael said in his normal accusatory way. She said she wasn't going to do it because it was too dangerous, Kyle replied defensively. It never occurred to me that she would try it without telling anyone. She does have a tendency to act on her own, Max said, and I've never known her to back down when a friend's life could be at stake. Wait a minute, Kyle froze. I just want to be clear on this. Are you saying Isabel is currently trapped in my mind? Max's face was stone as he nodded. Well, get her out, Kyle yelled. Hoping to break the tension, Maria walked up to him and yelled in his ear, Don't worry, Isabel, we're working on it. The joke didn't go over very well. The tension remained, though there was now a loud ringing in Kyle's ear to distract him for a moment. Has something like this ever happened when she dreamwalked before? Liz asked. Never, Max replied. I have no clue how to stop it. Michael and I can't consciously enter a person's mind like that. Are you sure? Maria asked, not wanting to broach a sensitive subject. Michael and Isabel do have that connection, you know, from before they were sent here. Maria was quite reluctantly bringing up the topic of the former relationship between Michael and Isabel when they were on their home planet. The two had shared some mental links in their human form, most notably when Isabel thought he had impregnated to try to reach her, Maria suggested. I don't think so, Liz interjected. She's in Kyle's mind. He's probably the only one who could get through to her. I did see her earlier when I meditated, Kyle suggested, but as soon as I realized she was there, I was pushed right out of my trance. You need to reach out through your mind, Liz replied. How? Kyle asked. Last time I checked, I was a mere mortal. Well, mostly mortal. Through your dreams, she explained. You need to go back to sleep. In case you missed what I said earlier, he replied, I haven't been having the easiest time falling asleep lately. How do you suggest we do this? Ooh, hang on. Maria bounced over to her purse and started digging around, finally pulling out a small bottle that she handed to Kyle. Use this. Kyle looked at it skeptically. It's a relaxation aid, she explained. Purely natural ingredients, nothing to worry about. I don't know, he was still reluctant. Sleeping pills? No, she said, not sleeping pills. They're just some herbs that help with relaxation. I use them at particularly stressful times in my life when the cedar oil I usually rely on isn't relaxing enough. You know, like when our lives are in some sort of mortal peril or the night before a really big test. Kyle looked at Isabel, still lying motionless on her bed. He felt a tremendous amount of guilt over the fact that everything appeared to be his fault. But why did you try to help me on your own? And you're sure it's safe? He asked. My mom wouldn't let me take it if she hadn't totally checked it out. Maria looked absolutely sure of herself. Hesitant, Kyle took one of the herbal capsules out of the bottle, staring at it as if it were dangerous. The blue capsule looked harmless enough to Kyle, but so did Michael, and he could kill people with his thoughts. Here, take it with this. Maria lifted the bowl off the nightstand. It still had some water left in it from their failed ritual. This has been one strange day. Kyle swallowed the capsule in a gulp. As Michael and Maria carefully returned Isabel's room to its normal setup, Max took Kyle to his room to give him a comfortable bed to lie in and relax. Liz followed, covering the windows and dimming the lights for him. Once everything was set up and Kyle was comfortably in bed, Michael and Maria joined them. Is everything okay? Max asked. I can't decide if the bed is too hard, too soft, or just right, Kyle replied. Do you have any porridge? No one laughed at the truly lame joke. Are you tired? Max asked. Do you think you can fall asleep? It would probably be easier if I didn't have poor people staring intensely at me, Kyle said. Max immediately understood. I should go check on Jason. Yeah, we'll go too. Maria agreed as they all started to leave the room. Liz, Kyle stopped his ex-girlfriend. Would you mind staying? Instinctively, she looked to Max for approval or to apologize for her connection to Kyle. But Max consciously chose not to return her glance. With his sister's life in jeopardy, this was not the time for petty jealousies. Besides, he had been trying to move beyond her bond with Kyle just as he hoped she could move past his relationship with Tess. After the others filed out of the room, Liz sat beside Kyle on Max's bed and took his hand into hers. It was certainly an odd situation, no matter how one looked at it, and they both couldn't help but smile. So back when we were dating, Kyle said, heading for dangerous territory, did you ever think we'd end up like this? What, didn't you? Liz played along, lying in my new boyfriend's bed while you tried to release his sister who's trapped in your dreams. I always suspected our relationship would end when I met an alien and threw all our lives into almost constant peril. Yeah, me too, Kyle agreed sleepily. I just wanted to make sure we both had the same expectations. Maria's magical herbs seem to be working, Liz asked hopefully. Kyle stifled a yawn in response. How do you think I'm supposed to find Isabel once I'm asleep? Honestly, Liz said, I have no idea. It's not exactly like we're treading on scientifically proven ground here, but I can't think of anything else we could do. Is it worth it? Kyle turned serious for a moment. All that we've been through, all that we're going to be put through. Liz thought about his question. There was no easy answer. I don't know. Obviously, in light of Alex, I'd have to say no. But then I think about Max, Michael, and Isabel going through all this by themselves with no one to turn to for help. And I have to be glad that we can be there for them. In spite of getting shot, running from the FBI, and Isabel getting trapped in my brain, Kyle added with a full yawn. Yeah, in spite of that, Liz smiled. Maybe we could stop talking so you can get some rest. Okay, he said sleepily, closing his eyes. Good night, Liz. Good night, she replied. Liz stayed with Kyle, listening to his breathing grow more steady. It did not take long for him to fall into what she had hoped would be a productive sleep. She waited for a few minutes to confirm he was definitely out before moving over to the chair by Max's desk. She had no intention of leaving him alone while he experienced whatever it was he was about to go through. Watching over his sleeping form, she wished Kyle luck on his journey, hoping he would be able to rescue Isabel and gain whatever kind of closure he needed to end his own suffering. Okay, we're on to chapter 19. That was chapter 18. Kyle stood in the middle of his living room, alone. Isabel, he yelled. Isabel, are you here? But no answer came. Then he heard the familiar voices fighting, screaming, dying. He made his way over to his bedroom door. He had hoped he would never have to witness this event again. It was the same hope he'd have every time he closed his eyes the past few weeks, but he knew he would have to go where the dream took him, if it was to find Isabel and free her from his mind. If only he knew how he was expected to do that. Placing his hand on the knob, he couldn't bring himself to turn it. The metal felt warm to the touch and was growing hotter. Do it for Isabel, he thought, and flung the door open without further hesitation. This time, however, he did not see a frightened Tess and a battered Alex. This time, his room was as empty as the living room, although if he listened closely, he could hear the voices off in the distance, straining not to yell. He knew they were different than before, but he did not know why. Stepping into the room, he searched for any clues to Isabel's whereabouts, but found nothing. He knelt on the floor in the position he had memorized as the spot where Alex had died. This is new, her voice said from behind him. Snapping to his feet, Kyle found the object of his mission into his mind, standing in the doorway. Isabel, good to see you've grown up, she said, obviously believing him to be just another dream image, which he was in a way. Does that mean you're ready to discuss why I'm here? Isabel, it's me, Kyle, he said. I've come to get you out. You're the one keeping me here. She still thought he was playing into the dream storyline. Let me go. No, Isabel, Kyle tried to clear up the confusion. It's me, Kyle. Max sent me back into my dream to find you and bring you out. Kyle, thank God. She reached out and grabbed him in a joyful embrace. How do we get out of here? That's the funny thing, he said. I'm not so sure. Let me get this straight, she said. You came in here to rescue me, but there was no plan to get you back out? It seemed like a good idea at the time. He knew just how dumb that sounded. Kyle, we're trying, he defended the plan. I realize you visit people in their dreams all the time, but this is kind of uncharted territory for me. How long have I been in your mind? It's almost 2 p.m, he said, giving her a moment to let that information sink in. 11 hours, she whispered in shock. Kyle sat down on his bed and noticed it was much more comfortable in his dreams than in reality. Have you been having a good time? Kyle, your mind is one scary place, she said with a laugh, joining him on the bed. But I think I figured out why you're plagued with all these dreams. What? How? I've been stuck here with the Kyle Valenti version of Mini-Me, Isabel explained. He showed me some interesting things. Like what? Kyle asked. Here, let me show you, she replied, getting back up. I think that may be the only way out of here. Taking Kyle by the hand, she led him through his house to the front door. When she glanced back at him, Kyle gave her a half-hearted smile to let her know he was ready for whatever they were about to do. As Isabel opened the front door, she expected to be taken to the police station, since that seemed to be the order of things. But instead, she found herself in the middle of the desert once again. I thought I had things figured out, she mumbled to herself. I know this place, Kyle said. I was hoping you would, she replied, since it is your dream. Kyle walked around, surveying the area, trying to remember why it was so familiar. It was more than just a dream image. There was a familiarity of years past, as if it were a memory from his childhood. He dropped to his knees at exactly the same spot where Isabel and little Kyle had been digging the hole in which she found Alex. The earth was now undisturbed, since their earlier work had been wiped away. Go ahead, she prompted, hoping they would find a different treasure this time. Kyle started digging with a manic pace, but it only took a few scoops of dirt before he hit something. Pushing away the soil, he pulled out a wooden box, holding it off with two hands. It looked like a miniature version of a treasure chest from old pirate movies. Isabel leaned in, hoping to see what was inside, but Kyle just sat staring at it, unable to lift the lid. She noticed it wasn't locked. It was only Kyle's own reluctance that kept him from opening the box. It was my 6th birthday, he said, with his eyes locked on the box. My dad was already at work when I woke up. My mom was waiting in the kitchen for me. She said she had found a treasure map and we were going in search of buried treasure. Isabel sat on the ground beside her friend to get comfortable for his story, hoping it would contain the answers they were waiting for. I was so excited, he continued, smiling. I nearly made myself sick eating breakfast so quickly. After I got dressed, Mom got us into the car and we drove out here. It felt like it took forever. He looked over to the side of the road and saw his mom's old car sitting there. A flash of recognition came over him because he had forgotten what it looked like. It had been so long since he had seen it pulling away. As soon as she stopped the car, I was out the door like a shot. He stared intently at the wooden box as if it held all the answers. Mom had to call me back to look at the map. I was ready to dig anywhere. Kyle stood up, carrying the clothes bag with him. Isabel stood as well and followed her friend as he moved to a newly appeared mile marker planted by the side of the road. The map started here. He tapped his foot on the ground beside the marker. Then it led us in this direction, 25 paces. Whispering, Kyle counted off as he walked to the collection of boulders that Isabel had used for shelter earlier. From here we went 30 paces north, he said, and walked the steps with Isabel in tow, until we wound up here. They were standing over the hole. It took me forever to dig, even though it was hardly deep at all. And I found this. Kyle opened the box. As soon as light hit the contents, two screaming voices exploded around them. But this time it was not Tess and Alex. This time they heard the angry shouts of Jim Valenti and a woman Isabel assumed to be Kyle's mom, Michelle. Ignoring the voices since their words were unclear, Isabel peered into the box along with Kyle. Inside, she saw a baseball like the one little Kyle had been tossing earlier. But this one was different. This one had blue writing all over it. A signed baseball? Isabel asked, incredulous. Signed by the 1988 World Series champion Dodgers. Kyle clarified with reverence. The richest tradition any boy could ask for, and I went and lost it so long ago. That's why we're here, Isabel shouted angrily. A stupid baseball? She certainly hoped there was more to the story and expected there was a considerable amount of information yet to be shared. No, he replied, confirming her suspicions. We're here because of that. Looking up, they saw a police vehicle in the place where his mom's car had been. The red and blue lights weren't flashing, but there was an urgency about the vehicle nonetheless. Something about its very existence implied they needed to hurry. Kyle was in no mood to hurry as he continued his tale, quietly counting off the paces in his mind as he headed for the car. The baseball was firmly in his hand, the box gone and forgotten. Mom was supposed to pick me up after school. On your birthday? Isabel asked for clarification. No, he said in a monotone. This was later. Go on, she pressed as they reached the car. She always picked me up after school, he continued, staring at the ball. Other kids took the bus. My mom was there for me every day, except one. They got into the back seat of the car, but went nowhere. No one was in the driver's seat, although Isabel suspected the little detail didn't matter. If Kyle wanted the car to move, it would move. I waited a long time. Kyle looked out the window to the spot where he had found his treasure. All the buses left. All the other parents had come and gone. I was totally alone when Deputy Blackwood pulled up. I knew something was wrong. Kyle reopened the door of the police car, and when he and Isabel got out, they were no longer in the desert. The car had deposited them right in front of the police station. The younger version of Deputy Blackwood Isabel had dealt with earlier walked in front of them, leading them into the station. Phones were ringing. Voices overlapped one another. A young deputy holding a phone called Deputy Blackwood over to the front desk. Wait right here, the deputy said without looking back to them. But Kyle ignored the deputy's words and continued walking the familiar route to his father's office, silently counting the steps as he walked. Isabel followed, knowing they were on the verge of a breakthrough. Once they reached the closed door to the office, Kyle stopped. They could hear the sheriff on the other side. He was crying. Aren't you going to open it? Isabel asked hopefully. No, he said, staring at his empty hands. Where did the ball go? She asked. I threw it out, he replied. When? She prodded. As soon as I got home. He was stone-faced. My dad told me that my mom had left while I was at school, that she wasn't coming back. At first, I blamed him because he was the only one telling me. Because he was the one telling me. By the time I got home, I was angry with her. I was so mad that I threw out the baseball she had given me on my birthday. It was the last truly happy time I had spent alone with her, and I didn't want to remember it. So you locked it away in your mind? Isabel felt they had almost solved his problem and had braced herself to be flung from Kyle's mind. No, Kyle dashed her hopes. I tried to forget it, to forget her. But the more I tried, the more I remembered. I know my dad got the ball out of the trash and put it away in a closet somewhere, but I've never found it. I've never looked. The sheriff's sobs grew louder, echoing into the hallway. Confused, Isabel pressed on. Open the door, Kyle. No, why not? He finally looked up into Isabel's eyes. Big boys don't cry. But your father was crying, Isabel carefully pressed on. But big boys don't cry, he insisted, stern-faced. Kyle, open the door. She reached for his shoulder to provide emotional support. Without breaking eye contact, Kyle held out his hand and turned the knob, opening the door. They were both surprised to find his bedroom was waiting for them on the other side. The crying had stopped. His father was gone. Stepping into the room, they found Alex's dead body lying on the floor and paused for a moment in regret. What is it, Kyle? She finally asked, sensing they were finally near the truth. What is it you're not telling me? Alex died on my birthday, Kyle said, grasping for answers. The day before, actually. In all the confusion surrounding Alex's death, Isabel could understand that she and her friends didn't remember to celebrate the occasion, but she could not figure out the link. But what does this have to do with your nightmares? What do Alex and your mom have in common? Kyle stood, staring down at the body. Isabel's mind raced. They kept getting closer to the solution to the puzzle, but she would have to force it out of him. We're trapped in here because of you, Kyle. What is it you won't remember? What is it you refuse to accept? He dropped to the floor beside the body, with tears welling in his eyes. His own body heaved with convulsions. Isabel was frightened to see her friend in such a state. He was in total breakdown. This was worse than anything she could have experienced in the real world, since it wasn't truly her friend Kyle, doubled over in front of her. She was witnessing the mental manifestation of Kyle's breakdown. It was pure emotion being released without restraint. Nothing in life could ever come close to the pain she felt emanating from his body. His face twisted in agony. Looking up at Isabel, he finally let out sobs for the years of repressing a single, seemingly minor memory. I carried her duffel bag to the car, he cried. What? She asked, confused. Suddenly, the sobs stopped, and Kyle grew very still. We were leaving for school, he explained, with a few rogue tears rolling down his face, and I saw her bag. She told me she was going away for a while, but she never let on that it was for good. The bag was almost as big as me, but I picked it up, and I carried it for her. She said I was her strong, big boy. Isabel was moved to tears by the recollection. I helped Tess take away Alex's body, Kyle finally let out the truth, and I helped my mom abandon her family. Dropping beside him, Isabel held on to her friend. You had nothing to do with it, Kyle. You didn't cause Alex's death. You didn't make your mom leave. Both things would have happened whether or not you were there. But I could have stopped them, he argued, sobbing. I could have stopped Tess. I could have stopped my mom. No, Kyle, Isabel soothed him. You didn't have the power to stop either of them. You were just an innocent bystander caught up in it all. But no, she said firmly, you were the victim. I couldn't have stopped them. His voice was childlike. It was the first time his mind was beginning to embrace the concept. No, Isabel pressed. You were just a little boy. Even if you had realized what was going on, you couldn't have done anything about it. Just like if you had realized Tess was killing Alex, you couldn't have stopped her. You didn't have the power in either situation. There was nothing you could do. Nothing? His voice continued in a child's tone. Nothing. Alex's body began to fade. They both watched it intently, both contented and just a little sad to see him go away. I'm so tired, Kyle said with tears flowing freely once again. Isabel pulled him onto the bed. Get some rest. Kyle lay on his bed, curling himself into a ball. Isabel took the covers from the foot of the bed and gently draped them over her friend. She stroked his hair as he began to look relaxed for the first time in a while. It's going to be all right, Kyle. Everything's going to be all right.
Chapter 20. In the Evanses' living room, Max watched as Jason started a rousing game of Jenga with Michael. The pair were crawling around on the floor, picking up the pieces they had spilled out of the box and were carrying on like they were the ones who were old friends. I've never seen Michael warm up to a child so quickly, Max said as Maria came over to him. I've never seen him warm up to anyone so quickly, Maria agreed. So what's the kid's story? Too long to go into, he replied. Gotcha, she said. I think I'll join in the game. Max continued to watch as she plopped herself on the floor beside Jason. For the first time that afternoon, he was actually glad that he had brought the boy along. Considering the mood he and Liz had been greeted with yesterday, Max suspected this was probably the first bit of fun Jason had experienced in a while. He was also glad to have brought Jason for the slightly selfish reason as well, because the boy was providing a minor distraction for him to keep his mind off of the many frightening different things that could possibly be going wrong in the other room. He continued to be amazed by how quickly Michael and Jason had bonded, although he suspected he shouldn't have been too surprised. Michael had spent years being roughed up by his foster father, Hank, all the while Max and Isabel were ignorant of the abuse. Somehow, Max suspected that the common bond between Michael and Jason was subtle enough that the pair would be naturally drawn to each other without realizing why. Max made a mental note to ask Michael about it some other time, then scratched it right off his mind when he remembered that Michael was never really big on those touchy-feely conversations. Feeling silly, standing in the doorway watching his friends playing, Max went over to join them on the floor. His mind wouldn't be even partly on the game, but at least it was a way to pass the time. The four of them settled in one of the quietest games of Jenga any of them had ever played. Three of the players kept an ear out to hear if they were needed in the other room, while the fourth sensed the tension and remained mostly quiet out of respect. Once Jason had finished placing the rows of rectangular blocks on top of one another, he took turns removing a block from the middle of the stack and placing it back on top. They went around the circle twice before Michael knocked it over, though Max suspected that the fall was on purpose since Jason was next and the tower was already leaning. That's not the Michael Guerin I know, Max thought. But then again, I've never really seen him interacting with kids. Maybe there's a fun uncle in there for my son after all. Gameplay continued as the tower was rebuilt and they started again. The game still didn't take anyone's mind off of Isabel and Kyle, but it did allow them to get more into it as the minutes passed. In fact, they were so engrossed in the game at one point that they didn't notice they were no longer alone. Isabel and Liz had entered the room, stopping to watch them for a moment. Good to know I was missed, Isabel said quietly as she saw the game players on the floor. Glad Max didn't have to interrupt his babysitter, she thought, as she noticed the young boy with them. Liz let out a cough to discreetly announce their presence, but it was unfortunately timed with another fall of the Jenga tower and all four players bursting out of the near righteous laughter. Good morning, Isabel said loudly from the doorway in a slightly annoyed tone. I'm so glad that while Kyle and I were in there fighting for our lives and his sanity, you guys got to play some fun party games. The look of relief on everyone's face was quite evident as Max was the first up to embrace his sister. The rest of the gang followed, although Jason stayed behind on the floor feeling somewhat out of place. Are you okay? Max asked, squeezing tightly. Fine, I think, she said, stifling a yawn. Surprisingly well rested, in fact. How's Kyle? Maria asked. Resting comfortably, Liz said cheerily. He was still sleeping soundly, Isabel added. We decided he needed rest, so we didn't bother to wake him. Yeah, Liz agreed. He's kind of taken over your room, Max. Sorry. Giving up my bed is the least I could do for him, Max replied, considering all the things he's been through. So what's the deal? Michael asked bluntly. Isabel didn't even consider explaining things since she felt what they had gone through was Kyle's business and it wasn't her place to tell. Just helping him battle some personal demons. Guess that means we can go, Michael said quickly, giving Isabel a hug to welcome her back to the waking world. I, for one, could use a shower. Me too, Max, Maria, Isabel, and even Jason all said in unison. Call us if you go to any other planes of existence, Maria added in Isabel's ear so she wouldn't be overheard. I'll walk you to the door, Isabel said, leading them away. Thanks for your help, guys. No problem, Maria said. Just another typical day in Roswell. Oh, for the atypical day every now and then, Isabel said. From your lips, Maria agreed as they reached the front door. Oh, some guy from your dad's work stopped by. Kyle spoke to him. Jesse, Isabel slipped before she remembered to play ignorant. While she had been stuck in Kyle's head, she had not entirely forgotten about their plans together, but it had slipped to the back of her mind. Now that she was finally free, it became her primary concern. She could only hope that he would forgive her for blowing him off 2 times in as many days. But then again, it was a good measuring stick for their relationship since she suspected this would not be the last time her other life would get in the way. Kyle didn't mention his name, Maria said, with growing suspicion over this mystery man. He told the guy that you were sick. I thought you should know in case he calls or something. Thanks, Isabel said, looking for a way to change the subject. We should go, Michael said bluntly, unknowingly coming to his friend's rescue. Don't you just love those temperamental artists? Maria commented to Isabel cryptically. Let's go, Remembrant. I don't know why I ever tell you anything, he said, although Isabel had no idea what they were talking about. You never tell me anything, Maria reminded. Well, thanks again, Isabel ushered them out the open door. We must do this again sometime. Until the next crisis, Maria agreed. Until then, Isabel said. Yeah, bye, the king of the monosyllabic sentence added. Isabel watched as the pair made their way down the front walk. No matter what evidence we may have to the contrary, she thought, those two were made for each other. No one else will have them. As Isabel was saying goodbye to their friends, Max and Liz rejoined Jason on the floor, cleaning up scattered wood pieces and returning them to the box from which they had come. Your sister looks like she's feeling better, Jason said. Yeah, we think it was a 24-hour flu, Max replied. She got it the same time yesterday, and apparently it's very precise. Jason looked at him like he didn't know what to make of what Max was saying. That is until both Max and Liz started giggling. Sorry this weekend got so crazy, Liz said. Are you kidding? Jason's eyes went wide. I was rescued from a mine shaft, got to visit the place I grew up, met all your cool friends, and kicked Michael's butt in Jenga. This was like the best weekend ever. He had the first genuine smile on his face that Max had seen all weekend. I never want to go home. The look of seriousness that crossed Liz's and Max's face told him that was not an option. The expression was contagious as the smile was wiped away from his face as well. The distractions had served their purpose in getting him to forget his troubles, but all 3 of them knew that there was still a long way to go before the situation was finally resolved. Liz took his hand. We'll talk to your mom together, and I'll even stay until we go back to the doctor on Monday. Yeah, whatever. The carefree Jason of the past hour had disappeared. Don't worry, Liz said. Aunt Jackie will take care of everything. The silence that followed was enough to tell Max all that he needed to know. Your mom already knows, doesn't she? Max spoke his suspicions. I never told her, Jason reluctantly admitted, but yeah, she has to know. Liz was beside herself. I can't believe that Aunt Jackie. Max grabbed her free hand, giving her a gentle look that said, not now. New plan, he said, focusing his attention back to Jason. We'll take you to see Liz's mom. I suspect if there's anyone who can get through to your mom, it will be her. The look of hope on Jason's face nearly made both Max's and Liz's hearts break. You think? Absolutely, Liz said firmly. My mom will make sure Aunt Jackie accepts the truth, and if she can't, I've always wanted to have a little brother. It seemed so simple, but Max knew that it wouldn't be. He also knew how important Jason was to Liz, and that made the boy important to him as well. They would see to it that Jason was protected, even if it meant bringing Max's own father and his law firm in on it. I do have one question, though, Max said. Jason looked uncomfortable. What? Back at the ranch, he asked, what happened to all the sheep? Jason laughed out loud as he detailed the story of the missing sheep by explaining that the rules of George's inheritance from his parents had required him to look after the sheep for 6 years. The time limit was up 2 months ago, and the sheep went with it. That's it? Liz sounded disappointed. I was hoping for something more. Sorry, Jason replied. And who have we got here? Isabel asked, coming back into the room. Jason, Max performed the introductions. This is my sister, Isabel. Isabel, this is my friend, Jason. Nice to meet you, Isabel said, giving the boy's hand a shake. Hi, he stammered with an odd look on his face. Glad you're feeling better. Thanks, she smiled. Well, if you don't mind, I've got to make a phone call. She grabbed the cordless phone as Jason's eyes followed her every move. We were on our way out. Max watched Jason watch his sister. I may be home later this afternoon, depending on things. Isabel silently cursed her dumb luck. Well, since I've been cooped up all morning, I might go out tonight, so I'll see you later. She was out of the room before he could ask her anything about her plans. Well, we should get over to Liz's place, Max said, noticing that Jason's eyes were still locked in the direction Isabel had just gone. And maybe you and I should continue that conversation about changes that we started last night, he added in a conspirational whisper. I call the front seat, Jason yelled as he ran to the car, slightly embarrassed. He's a good kid. Max took Liz's hand as they also walked to the car. So do you have any more fears about raising your own son? She asked. He gave her hand a little squeeze. I'm sure I always will. But as long as I have you around to help me out, I have a good feeling that everything will be just fine. He leaned in to kiss her, feeling secure in the knowledge that he would get his son back one day with Liz by his side. Not only did he think he would be fine raising his child, but he felt secure in the knowledge that he was growing up and into the role of the leader that he had been born to fill. Back in the house, Isabel stopped in the doorway to Max's room before continuing on her own. Checking in on Kyle, she saw that he appeared to be sleeping peacefully, all up in the fetal position. Since there was a shadow across his face, she couldn't be sure, but it appeared he was sucking his thumb. She could, however, see his right hand clearly, and unlike the previous night, she could tell that it was completely still. The tapping had ceased, and she expected that the dreams had stopped as well. She smiled at the sight, hoping that for a while at least, Kyle and all of her friends would have nothing but pleasant dreams.
Epilogue. Summer was back with a vengeance. The cool weather had broken, and early Sunday morning, it was already 10 degrees hotter than Saturday's high. Isabel hardly felt the heat. However, she climbed the hill. Max had lent her his car since she was spending the day with Jason, Liz and her family before they all went back to Artesia together to speak with Jason's mom. Even though she knew the car could make it up the hill, she did not wish to disturb the quiet, tranquil setting and had left it behind at the bottom. Brushing away a bed of perspiration, Isabel knelt on the ground with a bouquet of sunflowers laid out before her. She always found sunflowers to be the most interesting variety of flora. To look at them, they certainly weren't as pretty as roses, lilies, or even carnations, but their bright color and sturdy look always cheered her up when she was down. Much in a way, a particular friend used to have a similar effect on her. She'd had a wonderful date with Jesse the night before. Once they managed to avoid running into Kyle and his dad as the pair were out to dinner together at the same place she had chosen to go. Jesse had been totally understanding of her blowing him off because of her fake illness too. Just another lie in the dozen she had told to her friends and loved ones, but somehow it felt wrong to be thinking of Jessie, considering where she was at the moment. This is a nice surprise. A voice came from behind her. What? After yesterday, you didn't expect to see me here? Well, yeah, but it's still nice to see you. His voice was drawing her in. It would be nicer to be seen by you. I can't, she said, her eyes firmly fixed to his tombstone, his name, Alex Whitman, born 1983, died too young. I think I'm pretty good looking, he said, all things considered. Isabel trying not to smile at the gallows humor. You know what I mean. It hurts too much to look at you after seeing how you died. You'd rather remember me like that, he asked, doubled over in pain, begging for stop, she cried. I don't want to remember it at all. You have to, he said. It's the price you pay to help for helping Kyle. No good deed ever goes unpunished, Isabel. She could feel his breath on her shoulders, even though it was not real. Look at me. She finally turned to Alex, or at least the image of Alex. He looked just as she remembered him, with the same goofball smile he always had plastered onto his face. She loved that smile because she knew it had always gotten a little brighter whenever he noticed she was in the room. This is not the first visit to her since his death, and he hoped it would not be the last. She wasn't sure if he was a ghost, a dream, or something else entirely, but Isabel didn't care. I know it was hard to watch me die, Alex said. Trust me, I was there. Even in death, his pitiful attempts at humor would still elicit a sad smile from her. But now, knowing you were there too, it makes my death a little less lonely. It took so long for us to really get together in life, and now I feel like we were also a little bit together in death. If anything, it makes us closer. I miss you so much. He had a tear in her and she had a tear in her eye. I never I'm never far, he said. You know that. I know, she replied, and I'm glad. Good. Now stop being such a mope, he smiled. This place is depressing enough as it is. Everyone's crying when they come here. And if you're not crying, they're really quiet, as if they would wake anyone. What I wouldn't give for the wits to make an unscheduled appearance. That reminds me, she said, smiling for the first time. We did the talent night you and Maria and Liz had every year. Isabel proceeded to tell him all about the evening's festivities. It didn't matter that he wasn't really standing in front of her or that he was actually a ghost. Then he probably already knew everything she was saying. It just felt good for Isabel to be talking to him. In fact, she continued talking for a good half an hour, updating Alex on almost every part of her life, although she left the whole Jesse thing out of it, not wanting to spoil the mood by the time she had covered just about every subject. The sun had pumped up the temperature by a few more degrees, making it a little more uncomfortable. A gentle breeze blew up the hill, cooling Isabel. She half suspected that Alex had arranged for the breeze to cool her. He had always been trying to take care of her in her life, so it would stand no reason that he would continue to do so in death. Maybe he was going to become her own personal guardian angel. I could think of worse people to have watching over me, she thought. Thanks, Alex, she said, wrapping up their conversation. It's good to have a friend to talk to. You have plenty of friends, Alex reminded her, but none of them understands me like you did, she said, standing up and smoothing the wrinkles out of her sundress. Like you do. None of them cares like you. A bluebird swooped out of the sky and landed on his tombstone. It perched itself along the edge as if wanting to be a spectator as the scene played. itself out. I should get going, she said, as she turned herself into the direction of Max's car, preparing for the long walk back down, but not really wanting to go yet for a number of reasons. Really, he asked, feigning surprise. But you say, what is it that you came here to say? I just wanted to see you, she said, lying to both Alex and herself, after yesterday. Who exactly do you think you're fooling? He asked. I know what's going on in your beautiful, yet pleasantly complicated head. There's something else, something you want to say to me. She was almost too afraid to speak, but managed to get out a yes, a suspicion. He prodded, something out you can't bring yourself to say out loud on your own. It's probably nothing, she replied. This crazy life makes me paranoid. True, he smiled again, but you still have to say it just to hear the words spoken, just so that you can stop running over and over in your mind. She knew he was right. Whether the ghost of Alex was actually standing beside her didn't matter. The fact that it was probably just her overactive imagination was also unimportant. She had to speak the thought that had been nagging her since yesterday, or else she would now be the one not getting any sleep. Bracing herself for hearing her own words, Isabel finally spoke them out loud. Carl's mom left Roswell when he was 6 years old. Go on. She left around the time we came out of the pods. And there they were. Isabel knew that she could not pursue that line and thought with anyone else. At best, it would open up old wounds, while at worst, it could lead to even more tragic consequences. And if she had learned anything from her experience with Kyle, it was to it was to not obsess about the past. She stole one last look at her friend standing by the gravestone. His hands rested casually in his pockets. The smile on his face filled her with a level of peacefulness that she had felt since before his death. She carried that image of Alex with her as she walked back down the hill, heading for home. The end.
I just want to give Kyle a big hug.
I know.
Oh my God.
So sad.
I was reading it and it was like, how did they not say the word trauma in there? Because Alex's death basically triggered his childhood trauma. And I was like, dang, he needs like therapy. Like this is bad.
Well, yeah, he's 17 years old and sucking his thumb.
Yeah.
It was a really deep book. It's the first book of all the books that we've read so far that, like, I don't know, I guess touched me in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one was really personal.
Yep. And again, it's not stuff that we saw in the show. We didn't know how much it affected Kyle. We just saw the tap, 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 tap. So we could connect the dots, because it was more important for us to see, like, who killed Alex, not how and how much it affected, everybody else around him. Yeah. But I like that we get to see more of, like, how it affected Kyle. I mean, think about how strong she is. How strong she is to do that. To, like, affect everybody around her. Plus kill somebody, make him think that he's taking a duffel bag out, and use it to, that's the same way, like, he helped take his mom's duffel bag out. I mean, think about that. That poor kid.
When I was reading that chapter, I was like, wow, it's all making sense now. When he said carried out, like, he carried the mom's bag. So it was all, adding up.
Yeah. Sad.
It's just, I'm in a women's group right now on Wednesday night. And I'm like, this is what we talk about every Wednesday, about how trauma so deeply affects you. And it affects you into your adult years. Deal with things.
Well, it makes me look at Kyle a different way. Like, you watch him in season 1 and I didn't like him. He got on my nerves. I was like, just go away, Kyle. But if you read that and then you go back and watch season 1, you're like, oh, you get it. You kind of get why he's angry at the world. kind of get why he's like, this is my place. I'm a jock. I'm going to do this. This is my thing. And here comes Max, who takes his girlfriend away. He's like, all these things keep leaving him. You know what I mean? And I love his everybody in the story. Kyle is the one who changes the most. He grows from season 1 all the way up to the end of the books. He gets way more, I don't want to say action, but storyline because New Beginnings, it's very Kyle. It's all Kyle, because Kyle's like, I'm the only one who can work on cars. Like, so I'm the only one who can work. Like, what are you guys going to do? You don't even have job skills, because they really don't. They're aliens. They don't need it. Or so they think.
They
So,
could, rob a bank or create dollar bills into 100s or whatever.
They feel bad about that, so they don't do that at first. Eventually, they're like, forget this. We're just going to do it. But that comes later. But I love that Kyle, you see him grow. And I went from not liking him, thinking he was annoying, to thinking being one of like a really good character that I really enjoy. I'm glad he's there, so he kicks butt. He'll kick butt more. Just wait. We got to get through quarantine. And then the good ones will start. Yay!
Quarantine is the last problem child book, because you didn't like the ends, but I think you
that one's heavy. That one's really heavy, but I liked it.
Some people do like it. I've had people be like, they don't agree with me, but
I'm prepared to like it just because you don't like. I'm prepared to like it just because you don't.
Wait, which book?
Quarantine. Right, there you go.
I get
Quarantine
that.
I have right next to me. So it's got Max and Liz on the cover, and it says, "No one is safe. There's a new corporation in town, Medichem, and Liz is psyched to land a scholarship program working in the lab. But when the giant pharmaceutical company creates a disease that accidentally infects the town, Liz is among the first to fall ill, and despite his powers, Max is unable to heal her. There's also a new girl in town, Sadie, who's come to Roswell searching for her half-sister, who she believes is Maria. Maria doesn't know how to feel. What if she and Sadie do share a father? Maria hasn't seen him since she was 7 years old, and she's not sure she wants to see him now. But when news of the quarantine breaks, Maria has no choice but to keep Sadie with her in town, all while trying to find out who is sick and whether anyone can be saved in time."
It's COVID!
Right?
Right in time.
COVID! They knew
COVID!
I read that right when COVID started too, and I was like, this is ironic on so, because that's when we all.
They wrote it about COVID. They knew.
It's COVID!
The story itself isn't that bad. It's just the last part that I don't like. It doesn't fit right. You'll see what I mean when we get to it. And then
inconsistencies with the author.
So far, I still think my favorite book is still Skeletons in the Closet. So far.
And that one's more. I love that one too.
Mm-hmm. I like that one though. Dreamwalk was pretty good.
You wait until you get to Turnabout. You might like it more.
I'm sure I'll like that one. I've already read some of it. For
instance, if you're a Michael and Maria fan, you're gonna like Nightscapes. That's a lot of Michael and Maria.
All these books have already been Michael Maria.
There's
like every single book.
They're very spot on though with the way Michael acts and
yes, they are. I love the way that they're back and forth in Nightscapes. It's hilarious. It cracks me up. I laughed a lot in that one. And then there's a twist that I didn't even see coming. I can normally see it, and I was like, what? I'm not gonna tell you until you read it. But I love that one. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really good one. I like haunted houses anyway. So it was
quarantine next.
Yeah, quarantine. Let's get through that quarantine.
All right. We're in quarantine. Might as well read quarantine.
I know, right?
Right.
We'll read it. After we read it, I'll tell you all what my issues are with it. So you'll understand. Because now I just say I don't like it. And you'll be like, you won't understand really what I'm saying. But I don't like, I think whoever wrote that wasn't paying attention or something. I don't know. You'll see. Because it doesn't just click. Because it's like,
that book's called Quarantine.
well, you guys just watched that season 3 episode, right?
Yeah, we did that today.
We did Busted. Yeah.
Right. Well, and he's not, and Michael doesn't get his job until the second episode, I think, and Medicaid, right? Medicare or whatever the hell that place. I don't remember.
Medicam.
Yeah, that. But
I was
anyway,
like, Medicaid, that's what I'm on.
that's what I work. What am I talking about? So it doesn't.
Thank God for Medicaid. Thank you.
So we already know that place. We know of that place. We know that's where Michael's going. But Michael doesn't act like he already knows it. That bothers me because he should know it since that's where he's gonna work. But you'll see. You'll see when we read it.
It's funny. I haven't watched that episode in a while though, so it's good to watch that one.
Yeah, we don't watch too many season 3 episodes.
You don't.
Yeah, you might.
And
You
then
might
we
go
have
ahead and
that crazy guy that made us all, stop doing script read.
you'll learn more about that crazy woman that's played by that soap opera girl.
Mm-hmm.
She's in it too. You'll get to get a little bit more of that in the
Morgan
story.
Fairchild?
Huh?
Morgan Fairchild?
Yeah, her. And they're obsessed with figuring out, they're obsessed with Max. And I think they think Michael's Max. And it's a mess. But anyway, well, when we get through quarantine, I'll be like, so this is why I don't like it. But you might. Some people do. Some people think I'm nuts, but it's just.
Well,
No, but once you read New Beginnings and you compare New Beginnings Future Max Talk to the quarantine Future Max Talks, you're not going to like it. That's all I'm going to say.